My full tactical observation on Deschamps versus Capello, the tiny details you may not notice after spending time playing with both Fabio Capello and Deschamps. I have started noticing small tactical differences between these managers that are easy to miss if you only look at their overall team playstyle ratings. On paper, both managers can play long ball counter, but in actual matches, they don't feel the same to me at all. The way players react immediately after winning possession, the distance between midfielders, the timing of forward runs, the availability of passing options, the manager link-up, and even how the team behaves in different areas of the pitch all feel different. These are my observations from actually using both managers. When I started properly using the France Pack Deschamps in Division 2, I was around 1,518 points. I then played 7 matches, winning 6 and drawing 1 without losing a single game, and climbed to over 1,650 points. At first, I genuinely thought I was just lucky. The manager felt almost too good to be true, but after paying closer attention to what my players were doing, I started noticing why my gameplay felt so different. 1. Capello's biggest problem for me is not attacking. It is progressing the ball with Capello. My team sits very deep defensively. When I win the ball, the transition into attack starts almost immediately. My attacking players begin making forward runs, and some of my midfielders also start moving away from the ball. This sounds good for counterattacking, but it creates a major problem for the player who actually wins possession. Imagine that one of my defenders or midfielders recovers the ball deep in my own half. I may technically have 3 midfielders on the pitch, but that doesn't mean those 3 midfielders are available to help me progress the ball. My anchor man normally stays deep. My box-to-box midfielder can start moving forward. My attacking midfielders and forwards are already thinking about the counterattack. Suddenly, I have the ball, but when I look forward, the midfield feels empty. Before I see one of my own players, I can sometimes see 2 or 3 opposition players. That is the biggest problem. I don't lack players on the pitch. I lack players close enough to the ball carrier at the exact moment I need them. 2. With Capello, the runs sometimes happen before I am ready to use them. This is the small detail that changed how I understand Capello. When I recover possession, my players recognize the transition immediately and start attacking the available space. But sometimes I don't need a run yet. I need a passing option first. If my midfielder wins the ball deep, I need another midfielder to come close so that I can play a 1-2 and escape the opponent's pressure. Instead, the other midfielder may already be moving forward. Now the player who recovered possession is isolated. The opponent's striker immediately presses him. The opponent's midfielders are waiting behind that first press. Their defensive midfielders are protecting the center. So before I can even reach the middle of the pitch, I can find myself in situations that feel like 3 opponents against 1 player, 4 opponents against 2 players, sometimes even 5 opponents surrounding 2 or 3 of my players. The counterattacking runs are happening ahead of me, but I cannot use them because I haven't escaped the pressure. That is why progressing the ball through midfield with Capello is not impossible, but for me, it is much more difficult. 3. The center circle is where my real attack starts. This is important because my problem with Capello isn't necessarily what happens after I reach midfield. Once I successfully reach the center circle, I can play my football. That is where I can start playing 1-2s. That is where I can find my AMFs. That is where I can combine and manipulate the opponent's midfield. And once I break that first wave of pressure, my opponent can suddenly become extremely exposed. Their strikers have already moved forward to press me. Their midfielders have stepped up to stop my progression. Once I successfully play through those players, there is space behind them. That is where my AMFs become dangerous. So my biggest battle with Capello is not, how do I create a chance? It is, how do I reach the middle of the pitch with control? Once I reach that area, I can finally do something. 4. This is why Capello's orchestrator is so important. This is where I started understanding the purpose of Capello's manager link-up. When I win possession, my box-to-box midfielder can move away from the ball, while my anchorman generally maintains his deeper position. But an orchestrator doesn't immediately make the same aggressive forward movement. The orchestrator is usually still there. That makes him one of my easiest and most reliable passing options immediately after winning possession. So instead of trying to force my way through a crowded midfield with several 1-2s, Capello gives me another solution. Win the ball, find the orchestrator, give him time to turn, activate the goal poacher, send the long ball. This is where Capello becomes dangerous. 5. Capello's manager link-up explains his entire philosophy. The orchestrator to goal poacher. Manager link-up makes perfect sense for Capello. His deep defensive structure naturally creates distance between the player recovering possession and the players moving forward. So instead of forcing you to progress through every line of the opponent's press, the link-up gives you a way to bypass the midfield completely. A defender, anchorman, or midfielder wins possession. Within the first 2 or 3 seconds, I look for my orchestrator. Because the orchestrator hasn't immediately sprinted forward, he is normally available. The moment he receives the ball, I can delay slightly. That delay is important. While the orchestrator controls the ball, turns, and prepares himself, the goal poacher begins his movement. The striker may start his run from around my own side of the halfway line. Then the orchestrator releases the long ball. While the ball is traveling, the striker is still running. The ball is moving toward the open space. The striker is moving toward the same open space. The opposition defenders are now forced to turn around and chase him. Within approximately 5 to 7 seconds of winning possession, I can potentially go from defending deep inside my own half to having my striker running directly toward goal. That is where Capello's magic is. 6. Capello doesn't always need to beat the midfield. He can escape it. This is the biggest difference between Capello and Deschamps for me. Capello combines long ball counter with long ball. The way I experience it is simple. Long ball helps you bypass the midfield. Long ball counter gives you the immediate forward runs. Together they create extremely direct football. You defend deep. You win the ball. The haram football start immediately. Your players start running. You find your orchestrator. You send the ball. That is why I call Capello's football alarm football. Win the ball. The haram football start. Everybody goes. If you try to play slowly through midfield, you may struggle because your players can be too far apart. But if you understand the direct route, Capello can create a goal from almost nothing. 7. Deschamps solves the exact problem I have with Capello. The France pack. Deschamps gives me a completely different experience. When I win the ball in my own half, my first observation is simple. I immediately see passing options. My players don't all sprint away from me. They come closer. They show themselves for the ball. They give me opportunities to play 1-2s. If my defender has possession, I can find a midfielder. When that midfielder receives the ball, another player can become available. Instead of feeling like ball carrier to opponent to teammate, I feel more like ball carrier to teammate to progress. That makes escaping the opponent's initial press much easier. 8. Deschamps feels like possession in my own half. This is why I describe Deschamps as a mixture of possession game and long ball counter. In my own half, his movement feels approximately 80% possession and 20% long ball counter. I don't mean those as literal game engine percentages. I am using those numbers to describe what I see on the pitch. When I recover possession, most of my players are concerned with giving me passing options. They come closer. They help me progress. They allow me to move the ball from defense toward midfield without forcing a risky pass. The team almost behaves as if the first objective is, let's get out of our own half together. Nobody needs to immediately sprint 30 meters away from the ball. The passing structure comes first. 9. The moment I cross halfway, Deschamps changes. This is probably the most interesting detail I have noticed. As I progress toward the halfway line, I have plenty of passing options. But the moment I cross that middle line and enter my opponent's half, the behavior begins to change. The passing options gradually disappear. And the runs begin. Suddenly, players start sprinting in different directions. One attacks centrally, another attacks the channel, another stretches the defense. maybe only one or two players remain close enough to offer a short passing option while the others start attacking the available space. So, in the opponent's half, the percentages almost reverse: 20% possession and 80% long ball counter. Again, those aren't literal programmed percentages. They describe the tactical behavior I personally observe. In my own half, passing options: approaching halfway, progression; crossing halfway, movement starts changing. In the opponent's half, runs.
That is lovely, finished with amazing expertise.